There are many unaccounted for costs in closing a deal. Don't let these ruin yours.
Oh, Liz.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, pal. How are you?
Back here at the Lone Lounge, just ins and outs.
All the things.
We're going to talk about how things can take money out of your bank account.
More money than expected.
Not us. We didn't do it.
Not us.
Yeah, we're going to blame everyone else.
No, but the unexpected expenses, or the expenses that you aren't even thinking about when you're thinking about flipping a property or buying something rehab and burying it or whatever.
If you think too high level, if you're like, I use the phrase back of the napkin, but there's like a lot that goes on that napkin. Yeah. Like that you got to be mindful of.
And if your back of the napkin math only yields $10,000 or $20,000, then you definitely want to get into the nitty gritty to see if it's going to be worth it.
Is it really going to be 10 or is it really going to be 20? Or is there a way that you can tighten up things to make the money that you want? I think we talked, on an episode many, many moons ago about like, what is your time worth?
Yeah.
And that's different for everybody. So like sometimes when I assist clients with that back of the napkin math of like, hey, high level, I could be missing something, but like it looks like net should be somewhere in the neck of the woods of this. I stop and I say nothing. Sometimes that number makes someone very, very happy. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes that number is like, oh my gosh, that's it. Mm-hmm. And I try not to get my own personal feelings of that number. Yeah, because I think they look at us as experts, and I don't want, me getting excited about that number, kind of giving them a hope of, hey, this is a good thing, or vice versa. So I think really getting into the nitty gritty, making sure that your system has those holding costs, those hidden costs. Again, I just don't think not hidden in a negative way, things you just don't think about as often. So one thing that comes to mind is, let's say you're flipping a property. You got to think about the seller fees on the back end. Yeah. Obviously, there's been a lot of drama about NAR and all the lawsuits that have gone through, but assumptively, that has always been the norm here in Ohio, so I don't want to speak on other states, is 3% to the buyer, 3% to the seller for the agents involved. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's semi up for negotiation now, but let's just assume that that continues to be the norm. So you got 6%. Let's just keep at $100,000 deal. Mm-hmm. You get $6,000 in just realtor fees. You're going to have transfer taxes. You're going to have title insurance and some like various title fees depending on who you're going with.
Can I tell the internet what you just told me like right before we started this thing? This is bananas. Okay, transfer taxes. So we're in Ohio and transfer taxes are like what, $300 or $400? I mean, it's
very little.
It's not much.
It's based on the time of the year. It's
not tremendous. In Pennsylvania, in parts of Pennsylvania, transfer tax is like 2%.
1 to 2%.
1 to 2%.
In Philadelphia, I used to when I was in retail lending, did a bunch of business in Philly and like New Jersey area. And it's 1% for most of the city. And then it's 2% in a little area of town that's like really
the
ritzy.
Worst.
And it's 2% of the purchase price, which is kind of crazy. And it's both sides. So when you buy that property, say you bought it from a wholesaler or whatnot, you're paying that. And then you're paying it again when you offload it. So it's just like, I think crossing your T's and dotting your I's, which all these fees, a title company can generate for you. Yeah. Find a title company that, one, is investor friendly, because no offense to all the title companies, but some of you guys like investors, some of you don't. And to be honest, I hope you guys stay frank about that. They're a great client, but they're just different. You need someone that truly knows the investor community. They can get you a net to seller within a couple hours. Yeah. They just need the address and the sale price. Mm-hmm. So you can know those numbers. But yeah, transfer taxes.
Yeah, that's bananas. But like, are we getting into other costs?
Yeah, anything.
So I mean, so this is one that I feel like is often overlooked, and that is how much are you going to pay in interest on your hard money loan for the hold period, right? Yeah. And how do we know that? Well, okay, what's a hard money rate? It's going to be somewhere. I mean, if you're really good and you're really flipping and you're really and the deal makes a lot of sense, you might be in the 9s in a really good situation. Yeah. But more often than not, you're going to be in the 10, 11, 12% range.
Well, and I always want clients to make it easy to look at a deal and say yes or no to it. So at 12%, your interest-only payment is 1%
of the loan amount.
So $100,000 loan, back to our scenario, 1% of that means that your interest-only payment is $1,000. Yeah. We've talked previously on episodes about drawn interest and full note interest. So potentially that is an overestimate depending on how quickly you pull on your rehab budget and etc. Again, you want to just be able to evaluate a deal immediately. So that 1% of whatever your loan amount is going to be a quick way that you can figure out what that number is. What you don't know is how fast that project is going to move, how long it's going to take your buyer to close on their transaction.
If you have an unexpected challenge with a contractor who suddenly stops working or something like that, that can really tack into your profit.
So I would say like 6 months minimum. Is that like a good rule of thumb that you should assume 6 months worth of interest only payments?
I would say, yeah, to be safe. If you wanted to be super conservative, I think that's reasonable.
Now, if it's let's say a rehab over, I want to say 50 grand.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit longer.
Maybe 9 months.
Yeah. I mean, I've closed some heavy rehabs recently where they're like to the studs and back. I mean, those things take a minute and they leave so much uncertainty for whoops-a-daisies that you weren't expecting. So we're 6 months in holding costs. Again, $100,000 loan, 1%, $1,000, 6 months, $6,000. So now we went $6,000 in realtor fees, $6,000 in holding costs, and we had some title fees. So let's just say another $2,000 there. $14,000. And what about the front end of the transaction? What about us?
Yeah, you got to take into account the cost for lending.
Yeah,
you know,
it's not free.
How much is origination? How much is underwriting? You know, are there any processing fees? That kind of stuff. And that's something, I mean, when you talk to us, though, like we're going to give you a detailed quote that lists all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a really good idea. And I kind of pride myself on being pretty close when I give you a cash to close at the beginning of our conversation of getting that pretty close to what it's actually going to be.
I would say within $1,000.
Yeah.
You never know if like a survey is going to come up or if insurance cost is going to be a little bit more or something like that. But like, I would say we're good.
In my defense, if we get a short appraisal, if the terms dramatically change, if something like drastically changes about the deal, whether it be the rehab budget or the price or whatever, then that is obviously going to affect your cash to close. Yeah, but I mean, if everything closes we can pretty much predict pretty close to what it's going to be.
And I always say bigger deals obviously will cost more, but like $10,000 tends to cover the average deal.
Yeah.
Don't hold us to $10,000. I will come get you if you're like, I heard you on your podcast say $10,000.
It's only gonna be $2,000.
It's only gonna be $2,000, and then all of a sudden it's 12, and you're mad at me. No,
$3 million.
I would say back
complex.
of the napkin. Yeah. You're trying to figure out: should I call Liz? Should I call Adam? Should I call someone on the LFG team? The statement is $10,000 should typically cover you fairly well.
Yeah.
Bigger deals, let's say bigger than $250,000. Those fees will increase.
Yep.
But $10,000. So now we were at 14. Now we're at
24,000. Just in costs, just in the cost of doing business.
You haven't bought the thing yet.
You haven't
put a down payment. Everything's going to go perfectly. So I don't think there's anything major afterwards unless you decide to burr the transaction where you're going to have some refi fees on the back end. So it's just, I think we wanted to dive into this because I think a lot of investors, especially newer ones, want to look at deals with rose-colored glasses and get excited. And we want you to get excited as well. But also, I use the phrase often of like, it starts to feel like Monopoly at some point. But we're not playing a game. Very serious.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money. It's your financial well-being that is at stake. And we don't take it lightly, you know?
Means a lot to us at LFG. So being mindful of these costs that we're talking about, and let us quote you out a deal.